The Virelian star station looked like a frozen song made into a building. It floated above a pale gas giant, turning slowly, catching the light of a distant sun and breaking it into soft colors. From far away it seemed delicate, like glass. Up close it felt older than any human city, calm and careful, as if it had never been hurried by fear or hunger. Elia's ward stood at the edge of the reception hall and tried not to look like he was holding his breath. He was not a soldier, though he had trained with them. He was not a scientist, though he knew enough to ask the right questions. He was an envoy, a translator between worlds, wearing a dark uniform that was simple and clean because anything too loud could be seen as a challenge here. The hall itself was shaped like a wide shell. Tall arches rose overhead, not carved but grown, each curve smooth and exact. The floor was a pale surface that felt warm under his boots, as if it was alive in a quiet way. Thin lines of light ran beneath it, like rivers trapped in ice. There were no banners, no statues, no signs of power. The Virelians did not seem to enjoy showing strength. They preferred to show control. Around him, humans waited in small groups, speaking in low voices. Their voices sounded too rough in this place. Even whispers felt like stones dropped into a still pond. Elias could sense tension in every movement. They had been here for weeks. They had eaten carefully measured meals, slept in rooms that adjusted to their body heat, and held meetings that ended with polite silence. They had offered trade. They had offered scientific exchange. They had offered art, music, and history. The Virelians listened, then asked for more data, then listened again. No, yes. No, no. Just the slow turning of a lock that would not open. Across the hall, the Virelians stood as if they were part of the station itself. They were taller than most humans, slim, and dressed in layered fabric that shimmered when they moved. Their faces were narrow, their mouths small, their skin a soft gray-blue that seemed to carry faint patterns like mist. Most of their expressions were hard to read. Their stillness was not lazy, it was trained. At the center of the hall, a low platform held the day's main speaker, an elder of the Virelian Star Collective. The elder's name, as best as the human translators could shape it, was something like Veshtal. The elder spoke in calm tones, using a translation field that made the words clear but slightly delayed, as if meaning needed to travel a longer road than sound. "The collective recognizes the endurance of your species," Veshtal said. "You have entered the wider system without collapsing into disorder. That is noteworthy." Elias heard the careful pause before that last word. Noteworthy, not welcome, not trusted, not ready. "Our endurance comes from practice," the human ambassador replied. Ambassador Lin was a steady woman with a voice like a knife wrapped in cloth. "We learned early that space does not forgive mistakes. We learn to work together even when it is hard." The Virelians did not react. They rarely did. Their eyes stayed on the speaker, unblinking for long moments. Their pupils were not round like a human's. They were layered like rings inside rings, each one catching light differently. Elias had tried not to stare at first. Now he found it difficult not to. The Virelians asked questions, as always. They asked about supply routes, about reactor safety, about laws and punishments, about how humans kept their crews from breaking under stress. Elias answered when needed, using short sentences and avoiding jokes. Humor had not worked well here. The Virelians took words seriously. A joke sounded too much like a lie, and still at the end Veshtal said, "The collective will consider your statement." Then the meeting moved toward its usual ending, controlled, polite, and empty. Elias felt the same weight he had felt every day on this station. A sense of being measured, not as a person, but as a pattern, like a number that might not fit into a larger equation. As the crowd began to shift, Elias allowed himself to look around for something else to focus on. That was when he noticed her. She stood slightly apart from the other Virelians, near an arch that opened toward a corridor lined with soft blue light. She was not on the platform. She did not speak, yet something about her presence felt sharp, like a point hidden inside smooth cloth. Her eyes were what caught him. They were not only layered rings, they carried tiny flecks that shimmered like distant stars. When she moved her head, the flecks moved too, like a sky turning slowly. Elias had seen Virelian eyes before, of course, but hers were different, not brighter, not more beautiful in a simple way, different like an instrument tuned to a note humans could barely hear. She noticed him noticing. Her gaze met his, steady and direct. He froze for half a heartbeat, then remembered he was supposed to be calm. Elias nodded politely, a small gesture. She did not nod back. Instead, she watched him the way a person watches a door that might open. He turned away to avoid making her uncomfortable. But a thought came, uninvited, simple as a child's honesty. He had been trained not to comment on alien features. Humans could offend without meaning to. But he had also been trained to be human because that was the one thing no one else could do. His mouth moved before his caution could stop it. "Your eyes," he said, speaking softly so only she could hear. "They look like you carry the night sky inside them." The words hung in the air between them. Elias felt the sudden quiet around him as if the station itself had leaned closer. A few Virelians turned their heads. The human ambassador paused mid-step. Two human security officers shifted their weight, hands moving slightly closer to their belts. Elias' stomach tightened. He had just broken protocol. He had done it in the worst place to do it, in front of everyone. The Virelian woman did not react with anger. She did not recoil. She did not show pleasure either, at least not in any human way. But something changed in her posture, a small tilt of the head, a tightening of attention. She spoke, and the translation field picked her words up immediately, as if it had been waiting for her voice. "You observe," she said. Elias swallowed. "Yes, I'm sorry if—" "No," she interrupted, calm as still water. "You observe and you speak what you observe." That is unusual here. Around them, the Virelians held still. Veshtal's gaze moved to the woman, then to Elias. The elder's face remained unreadable, but Elias felt the pressure of that attention like a hand on his chest. The woman's eyes stayed on Elias. The flecks inside them seemed to drift, slow and deep. Then she asked very softly, "Can I show you something?" Elias blinked. He waited for the rest of the sentence, some formal request, some test, some hidden trap. But there was nothing else, just that question. Ambassador Lin moved closer, her face careful. "Envoy Ward," she said quietly, "we should proceed with caution." Elias understood. Everything here was caution. Every step had been caution, and it had brought them nowhere. He looked at the woman again. She did not seem like someone playing a game. She seemed like someone holding a small flame, unsure whether it was safe to let others see it. "What is your name?" Elias asked. The woman paused, as if deciding how much to give. "You may call me Sareth." Elias nodded once. "I'm Elias Ward." Sareth's gaze did not flicker away. "Elias Ward, can I show you something?" Elias felt the whole room waiting, humans and Virelians alike. He could almost hear the unspoken rules stacking up like walls. He thought about Earth, about the crowded cities and the silent deserts, about children watching rocket launches with open mouths. He thought about all the people who had died to get humans to the stars. Not in glory, not in conquest, but in effort, in trying again after failure. He thought about the Virelians too, their calm, their distance, their way of speaking as if emotion was a dangerous chemical. Maybe, he realized, the lock would not open with another data report. Maybe it would open with something far older than diplomacy. Curiosity. "If it's allowed," Elias said, and let his voice stay steady. "Yes." Sareth turned without hurry and began to walk toward the corridor. Two human security officers moved to follow. Veshtal raised one hand, and a Virelian attendant stepped forward, blocking them gently. Not aggressively, like a door closing on soft hinges. "This is between witness and guest," Veshtal said. "No weapons, no additional bodies." Ambassador Lin frowned. "He is our envoy." "And he is your voice," Veshtal replied. "If your voice cannot walk alone for 10 minutes, then your words mean less." It was not an insult. It was a fact delivered like a measurement. Ambassador Lin looked at Elias. Her eyes asked a question she could not speak. "Are you sure?" Elias gave her a small nod. He hoped it looked confident. Inside, he felt as if he were stepping onto thin ice. He followed Sareth into the corridor. The corridor curved downward and to the left, gently, like the inside of a shell. The light was dimmer here, more private. The station's walls were smooth, but not plain. If Elias focused, he could see faint lines inside the material, like threads woven through stone. Sareth walked with quiet steps that made no sound. Elias' boots, in contrast, felt loud. He tried to place his feet more carefully. "Is this permitted?" Elias asked. Sareth did not look back. "It is not forbidden." That answer made Elias uneasy. "That doesn't mean it's safe." Sareth stopped and turned. Her eyes held him, calm and deep. "Safety is a story told by those who have time to tell stories." Elias frowned. "That sounds like something a human would say." For the first time, Sareth's mouth shifted slightly, not quite a smile, something like the shape of amusement. I have listened to your recordings, she said. Your music, your spoken histories. Your arguments between leaders, your jokes that do not translate. Elias felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. Then you know we're messy? Yes, Sareth said simply. You are not still. They continued down the corridor. As they moved, Elias noticed small openings in the walls that looked like windows, but they did not show space. Instead, they showed shifting light like slow-moving water. He reached toward one without touching it. What are these? He asked. Sareth's voice lowered as if the corridor could listen. Memory paths. The station remembers who walks where, not to punish, to understand. We do not trust easily. Elias nodded. Humans don't either. We just pretend we do sometimes. Sareth paused again, and this time her gaze held a new weight. That pretending is powerful. Before Elias could ask what she meant, Sareth stepped toward a section of wall that looked no different than the rest. She placed her palm on it. A soft vibration ran through the material, like a distant heartbeat. A seam appeared, opening in a smooth circle. The wall unfolded into a doorway, revealing darkness beyond and a faint, cool smell like rain. Elias hesitated at the threshold. This place is not shown, Sareth said, and her voice carried something Elias could not name, not fear, not excitement, something like respect or grief held tightly. Not to your kind, not to most of mine. Then why me? Elias asked. Sareth's eyes flickered just once to his face. Because you spoke truth without calculation. Elias felt that land inside him in a strange way. He had not meant it as strategy. He had meant it as honest wonder. Sareth stepped into the darkness. After a heartbeat, Elias followed. The room beyond was wide and low, like a cave made by careful hands. The light inside was faint, coming from thin lines in the floor that formed circles within circles, patterns so complex they made Elias' head feel slightly dizzy. The air was cooler here and very still. At the center of the room stood a structure like a tall frame, made of dark material that seemed to swallow light. Inside the frame, something floated. A small sphere, no bigger than Elias' fist, turning slowly. It did not glow, yet it seemed to pull his attention the way gravity pulls a falling stone. Sareth stood beside it as if beside a sleeping animal. Elias lowered his voice without thinking. What is it? Sareth looked at the sphere, then at him. The flecks in her eyes drifted like stars. It is a key, she said, and a question. Elias felt his heartbeat grow louder in his own ears. A key to what? Sareth's reply was barely above a whisper. To the part of us we do not show, she said. To the reason we watch instead of act. Elias stared at the dark sphere and felt a chill that was not from the cool air. He did not know what Sareth was about to reveal, but he knew, deep in his bones, that this was not a small secret. This was the kind of secret that could change how two species saw the universe. Sareth lifted one hand toward the floating sphere, stopping just short of touching it, as if even she respected its boundary. Elias Ward, she said softly, you looked into my eyes and saw the stars. Now I will show you why the stars look back. And as she spoke, the sphere's surface shifted, not with light, but with something that felt like a door opening inside the mind. Elias took a slow breath and stepped closer. The dark sphere did not shine. It did not glow or pulse or send out beams of light like the machines in human stories. It simply was, floating in the center of the frame, silent and steady, as if it had all the time in the universe. Elias stood a few steps away, his hands open at his sides. He felt like he was standing near the edge of a deep lake, unsure how cold the water would be if he stepped in. Sareth lowered her hands slowly, stopping just before her fingers touched the surface of the sphere. This is not a tool, she said. Not in the way you understand tools. It does not obey, it does not serve, it reveals. Elias swallowed. Reveals what? Sareth's eyes shifted back to him. What has been seen, what has been lost? Elias glanced at the patterns on the floor, the slow circles within circles. By who? By us, she answered, and by those who came before us, and by those who will never come again. She finally touched the sphere. The world did not explode into light. There was no flash, no shock. Instead, Elias felt a soft pressure behind his eyes, like a hand gently guiding his attention. The room faded, not into darkness, but into something whiter. He was still standing. He could still feel the floor beneath his boots. But at the same time, he was somewhere else. He stood on a world that was not Earth. The sky above him was a deep violet, streaked with clouds that glowed faintly like embers. Two suns hung low on the horizon, one small and blue, the other large and red. The ground beneath his feet was cracked stone, warm and dry. He turned slowly, his breath catching in his chest. Around him rose the remains of a city. Tall towers leaned at strange angles, broken and silent. Wide roads were split open, and strange, curved vehicles lay scattered like fallen insects. There was no wind, no sound, not even the call of an animal. "Is this real?" Elias whispered. Sareth's voice came from beside him, though he could not see her clearly. She felt like a presence rather than a body. "It was," she said, "long ago." Elias walked forward. His boots made no sound on the stone. He reached out and touched a fallen wall. His hand passed through it like mist. "A memory," he said. "Yes." The sky above them shifted. The two suns faded, replaced by a single white star. The city changed, too. The towers grew whole again. Lights appeared in windows. Beings moved through the streets. They were not human. They were tall and broad, with thick arms and glowing marks on their skin. Elias watched as the world lived. He saw children running across open plazas. He saw groups of elders sitting in circles, talking with slow, careful movements. He saw machines rising into the sky, shaped like wings made of metal and light. "What happened to them?" Elias asked. Sareth did not answer right away. The sky darkened. The white star flared, growing brighter, harsher. The beings in the streets looked up. Some ran, some stood still, frozen by fear or disbelief. The star changed color, turning from white to a burning gold. The world ended in silence, not in fire, not in a loud blast. The light simply grew too strong. The air itself seemed to tear apart. The buildings faded. The ground cracked and turned to dust. The beings vanished, not as if they were destroyed, but as if they were erased. Elias stumbled back, his heart racing. "You watched this?" "Yes," Sareth said. The scene shifted again. Now Elias stood on the edge of a wide ocean. The water was dark green, moving in slow, heavy waves. Strange ships floated on its surface, their shapes long and smooth, like creatures resting between breaths. On the shore, beings with thin bodies and long faces gathered, looking out at the sea. Above them, the sky was filled with streaks of light, not stars, falling objects. "An impact event," Elias said, recognizing the pattern. Sareth's voice was quiet. "Your word for it is accurate." The first object hit the ocean. A wall of water rose higher than any mountain Elias had ever seen. The ships were lifted like toys and thrown into the air. The shore disappeared under a moving field of white and green. Elias closed his eyes, but the scene stayed. He felt the weight of it in his chest. "How many?" he asked. "Thousands," Sareth said. "More than we can count. We do not measure in numbers anymore. We measure in absences." The world changed again and again. A desert planet where cities were buried under slow-moving sand. A frozen moon where the last lights of a research station went dark one by one. A jungle world where the sky itself turned toxic and the forests fell silent. Each time Elias felt the same pattern: life, growth, hope, then something beyond control, and always, always there was a moment where he saw Virelian ships in the sky, watching, recording. Arriving too late. "You don't help," Elias said, his voice tight. "We do not interfere," Sareth replied. "We observe, we learn, we preserve what can be preserved." "But you could save some of them," Elias said. "You have the technology, the ships, the knowledge." "Yes." The simple word hit him harder than any long explanation. "Then why don't you?" he demanded. The scene faded. The ocean, the sky, the falling worlds all dissolved. Elias found himself back in the chamber, standing on the patterned floor. The dark sphere floated quietly in front of him. Sareth stood beside it, her hand lowered now, her eyes steady but heavy. "Because when we tried," she said, "we became something else." Elias turned to face her fully. "Something worse." "Something loud," Sareth said. "Something that believed it always knew the correct path for others. We saved worlds, and in saving them, we shaped them. We changed their choices, their conflicts, their futures. They did not grow. They followed." Elias frowned. "That still sounds better than letting them die." "For a time," Sareth said. "Then they began to look to us for every answer, every problem, every fear, and when we could not solve something, they broke." She gestured toward the sphere. "The last world we tried to guide destroyed itself in a war over which of our teachings was more true." Elias let that sink in. "So you decided to stop," he said. "Yes." "And now you just watch everything fall apart," Elias replied. Sareth's gaze did not leave him. "We watch everything become what it will become without our shadow over it." Elias walked a slow circle around the sphere. "You marked humanity, didn't you?" Sareth did not answer. "You've been watching us too," he pressed. "Yes." "And what did you see?" Elias asked. Sareth hesitated. The flecks in her eyes shifted like stars behind thin clouds. "We saw a species that should have ended itself many times," she said. "Through war, through hunger, through the slow damage to its own world, your probability curves were steep." Elias let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That sounds about right. But you did not end," Sareth continued. "You argued, you failed, you tried again. You built tools that harmed you, then tools to stop the harm. You fell into space by accident, and instead of turning back, you learned how to stay." Elias stopped walking. "So what's our prediction?" Sareth looked at the sphere. "Unclear, that is rare." Elias raised an eyebrow. "We're a question mark?" "Yes," he smiled slightly. "We've been that for a long time." Silence filled the chamber, thick but not uncomfortable. Elias looked at Sareth. "You didn't bring me here just to show me a sad story." "No," she agreed. "Then what do you want from me?" he asked. Sareth met his eyes. "I want to understand something." "What?" "When you see a world that is about to fall," she said, "why do you still reach out?" Elias thought about the images he had seen, the cities, the oceans, the silent skies. "Because sometimes," he said slowly, "reaching out doesn't change the ending, but it changes how you walk toward it, and sometimes it does change the ending, even if only a little." Sareth studied him. "That answer is inefficient," Elias smiled. "Most human answers are." Sareth did not smile back, but something in her posture softened. "Your leaders want access to our archives," she said, "to our memory engines, to our records of the stars." "Yes," Elias said. "We want to learn about the galaxy, about what's out there, about what we might become." "And what if what you learn tells you that you will fail?" Sareth asked. Elias did not hesitate. "Then we'll try anyway." Sareth looked back at the sphere. "That is what makes you dangerous." Elias tilted his head. "Or useful." Sareth considered this. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as if the station itself was listening. "There is something else you should see," Sareth said. She touched the sphere again. This time the scene that formed was closer, more familiar. Elias saw Earth. Not as a single image, but as many moments layered together. Cities glowing at night, storms rolling over oceans, children in classrooms, old people sitting on benches watching the sky, rockets rising, leaving trails of fire and smoke behind them. He felt a tightness in his chest that surprised him. "You see us like this?" he asked. "Yes," Sareth said, "and we see something we do not see in others." "What?" Elias whispered. Sareth's voice was quiet, almost careful. "You do not wait for the stars to decide your place among them," she said. "You decide and then you go." The image shifted. Now Elias saw human ships flying through unknown systems, not in perfect lines, not in clean formations. Some were patched, some were mismatched. Some carried strange markings from worlds that were not human at all. He saw humans helping other species repair broken stations. He saw trade posts growing into mixed cities. He saw arguments, conflicts, and failures. But he also saw hands reaching across different shapes and colors and forms. "This future is not certain," Sareth said. "It is one of many paths." Elias stared at the scene. "Why show me this?" Sareth turned to him. "Because the collective is deciding whether to keep watching your kind," she said, "or whether to step back and let you watch us." Elias felt the weight of that. "That doesn't sound like a small decision." "It is not." He took a slow breath. "Then tell them the truth." "What truth?" Sareth asked. "That we're not heroes," Elias said. "We're not saviors, we're just people who don't like being alone in the dark. So when we see a light, we move toward it, and when we don't, we try to make one." Sareth held his gaze for a long moment. The sphere slowly went still, the images fading. Footsteps echoed faintly from the corridor outside, distant voices, the meeting hall calling them back. Sareth stepped away from the sphere. "You should return," she said. "They will ask what you saw." Elias nodded. "What should I tell them?" Sareth paused at the doorway, then looked back. "Tell them," she said, "that the stars are not quiet because they are empty. They are quiet because they are waiting." Elias felt a chill that this time was not from the air. He followed her out of the chamber, knowing that whatever came next would not be another careful, silent meeting. Something had shifted, not in the station, but in how two species were about to look at the sky. The meeting hall did not feel the same when Elias and Sareth returned. The light still flowed under the floor. The arches still curved overhead like frozen waves. But now, to Elias, the space felt smaller, as if the walls had moved closer to listen. Humans and Virelians turned when they entered. Ambassador Lynn's eyes searched Elias' face, looking for signs of danger or shock, or something she could name and prepare for. Veshtal watched with the calm of a mountain that had seen many storms and expected many more. Sareth stepped forward first. "The witness returns," Veshtal said. "You went where few of your kind have gone." "Yes," Elias replied. His voice sounded steady to his own ears, but his chest still carried the weight of the worlds he had seen fall. "And I saw what few of my kind have seen." Veshtal inclined their heads slightly. "Then speak." Elias took a slow breath. He did not tell them everything. He did not describe every city, every sky, every moment of ending. He spoke instead of patterns, of how life rose, reached, and sometimes vanished, of how the Virelians watched and how humans could not seem to do the same. "We don't wait very well," Elias said. "When we see something breaking, we try to hold it together, even if we don't know how, even if we make it worse. We try." There was a murmur among the human delegation. The Virelians remained still, but Elias noticed small changes in posture, slight shifts of attention. "And what would you try to hold together now?" Veshtal asked. Elias met the elder's gaze. "This, us." The word felt small for what he meant, but it was the only one he had. Before Veshtal could reply, a low tone vibrated through the hall. It was not loud, but it was deep, and Elias felt it in his bones. Sareth turned her head toward the far wall. "The station has received a long-range alert." Veshtal raised a hand, and the floor at the center of the hall shimmered. A three-dimensional map rose from it, formed of light and thin lines. Elias recognized star patterns from human charts, mixed with others he did not know. One region pulsed with a slow, growing glow. "That is not on our schedule," Ambassador Lin said. "It is not a ship," Sareth said. "It is not a fleet." "Then what is it?" Elias asked. Veshtal's voice lowered. "It is a collapse." The map zoomed in. A star system appeared with several planets marked in soft blue. Around the main star, space itself seemed to twist like a reflection in disturbed water. "A spatial anomaly," Veshtal continued. "We have observed similar events. They do not stop, they expand." "How fast?" Elias asked. Sareth answered. "At this rate, the system will be uninhabitable within one of your weeks." Elias felt his stomach drop. "There are people there?" "3 inhabited worlds," Sareth said. 2 pre-spacefaring, 1 early spacefaring." Ambassador Lin stepped forward. "Then we need to warn them." "Evacuate if possible." Veshtal looked at her. "They do not have the means to leave their gravity wells, and we do not interfere." Elias turned sharply. "You're just going to watch them die?" Veshtal did not react to the emotion in his voice. "We will record. We will preserve what we can of their culture, their language, their history." "That's not the same," Elias said. "No," Veshtal agreed. "It is not." The map continued to pulse, slow and steady, like a countdown. Ambassador Lin looked at Elias. "We don't have the ships to move whole worlds worth of people, even if we called every human fleet in range." Elias stared at the glowing system. He thought of the ocean world, of the city under 2 suns, of all the moments that ended without anyone trying to change them. "What about stabilizing the anomaly?" he asked. Sareth's eyes shifted. "Our models show a low probability of success." "How low?" Elias pressed. "Less than 5%, she said. Elias nodded. "That's higher than 0. Veshtal studied him. "You would risk your ships, your people, your future for a chance that small?" Elias did not look away. "We risk them every time we launch into space." Ambassador Lin hesitated, then spoke. "If we do this, we do it together. We can't handle this alone." The hall fell quiet. Veshtal turned to Sareth. "You brought this human into the hidden chamber. You showed him the key and the question. What answer did you find?" Sareth's voice was steady. "That watching the fire does not teach you how to survive it." Veshtal was silent for a long moment. Then the elder raised both hands. The map shifted, showing Virelian ships stationed across nearby systems. "We will not lead," Veshtal said, "but we will not stand aside." Elias let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. The call went out across human space first. Ambassador Lin's voice carried through every channel, every station, every ship that could listen. "This is a request for aid, not an order. There is a system in danger. There are lives that will end if nothing is done. We are going anyway. If you can reach us, if you can help, come." Elias watched the responses light up the display. Civilian transports, mining vessels, research ships, old cargo haulers that had not been refitted in decades, new patrol ships fresh from the docks. Not all of them could fight a cosmic event, but they could carry people. They could relay signals. They could act as anchors, platforms, power sources. They could be present. The Virelians opened their data vaults. For the first time, they shared models of past anomalies, predictions, and failures. Human scientists worked beside Virelian analysts, arguing, correcting, building new simulations in real time. Sareth stood near Elias as the station turned into something closer to a living mind than a building. "You move very quickly," she observed. "We don't like waiting for bad news to get worse," Elias replied. The armada formed over the next 2 days. It was not beautiful in the way Virelian formations were. It was messy. Ships of different sizes and shapes drifted into place, some painted with bright markings, others worn and dark. Some carried flags or symbols from Earth's many nations. Some carried none at all. Elias took a shuttle to one of the human command ships, a large carrier that had been refitted more times than anyone could remember. Its name, painted in faded letters along the side, read, "Second Chance." From the bridge, Elias watched the anomaly grow on the main display. The space around the star system twisted more each hour. "Final approach in 12 minutes, the pilot said. Virelian ships took position alongside the human ones. Their smooth, silver forms contrasted sharply with the patched, uneven human hulls. Sareth's voice came through the shared channel. "We will deploy our stabilizers when you signal." Elias leaned forward. "What happens if this goes wrong?" "There will be side effects," Sareth said. "That's not an answer," Elias replied. There was a brief pause. "The system may collapse faster," Elias nodded. "Then let's not let it go wrong." The fleet moved in. The anomaly filled the view now, a great twisting scar in space. The star behind it flickered, its light bending in strange ways. Human ships launched drones, long lines of them carrying power cores and anchor devices. Virelian ships released fields of controlled energy, trying to smooth the twisted space like hands pressing down ripples in water. "Power levels rising," a human engineer called out. "Stability at 3%, 4. "Hold it," Elias said, though he knew the machines did not listen to voices. The first wave of evac shuttles launched toward the inhabited planets. They would not save everyone. Elias knew that, but they would save some. On the display, he saw cities below, lights blinking as people looked up at strange ships in their sky. He saw roads fill with movement. He saw confusion turn into action. A sudden jolt rocked the Second Chance. "Field fluctuation," someone shouted. The anomaly pulsed, expanding outward. "Stability dropping," the engineer said. 2%, 1. Sareth's voice cut in, sharp for the first time. "We are losing control of the edge." Elias gripped the console. "Then push the center." "That will overload your ships," Sareth warned. "Do it anyway," Elias said. Human and Virelian power systems linked. The fleet became a single, strained network. Lights flickered across the bridges of dozens of ships. The anomaly shuddered. For a moment, Elias thought it was about to tear open completely. Then slowly, like a breath being let out, the twisting space began to tighten. "Stability at 5%, the engineer said, disbelief in his voice. 6. Evac shuttles continued to rise from the planets below, tiny points of light climbing away from the worlds they might never see again. The anomaly shrank, not disappearing, but slowing. 10%, the engineer said. We're holding it." Cheers broke out on the bridge. Elias did not join them. He watched the display, his hands still tight on the console. After a long, quiet stretch of time, Sareth's voice came through again. This time it carried something close to wonder. "This outcome," she said, "was not in our models." Elias finally allowed himself a small smile. "We don't fit in models very well." The fleet held position for hours, then days, slowly stabilizing the space around the system enough for evacuation to continue. Not everyone was saved. Elias knew that, but many were. When it was over, the armada drifted in tired silence, power systems cooling, crews resting where they stood. Veshtal's image appeared on the main screen of the Second Chance. "You have altered a path," the elder said. "Not completely, not cleanly, but undeniably." Elias leaned back in his chair, exhaustion washing over him. "That's kind of our style." Sareth appeared beside Veshtal. Her eyes met Elias' through the screen. "The stars did not look back today," she said. "They were too busy being held in place." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Next time," he said, "we'll hold them even better." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of something new. Something like the beginning of a shared story that neither humans nor Virelians had written yet, but both had finally decided to tell together. The stars around the armada looked different now. Not brighter, not closer. but changed in a way Elias could not fully explain, like a room that feels warmer even after the fire has gone out. The second chance drifted slowly at the edge of the stabilized system. The anomaly was still there, but it no longer twisted space in violent waves. It moved like a quiet scar, a reminder instead of a threat. On the bridge, the crew spoke in low voices. Some leaned against consoles. Some stared at the display, watching the last evacuation shuttles dock with transport ships. Elias stood near the front window, his hands behind his back. Below them, one of the saved worlds turned slowly. Its oceans reflected the distant star in long bands of gold. Cities glowed faintly along the coastlines, alive, breathing, continuing. He felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief for the lives that had been lifted away from the edge. Sadness for the ones that had not made it. Sareth stood beside him. She had come aboard quietly, without ceremony. The human crew had watched her with curiosity, but also with a kind of respect that had not been there before. "Your people are very tired," she said. "So are yours," Elias replied. Sareth inclined her head. "Yes, we are not used to this kind of tired." They stood in silence for a moment. Veshtal's image appeared on the main screen again. The Elder's presence filled the bridge, calm and steady as ever. "The collective has reviewed the event," Veshtal said. "Our memory engines have been updated." Elias turned toward the screen. "What did they say?" Veshtal paused, just slightly. "They recorded an outcome altered by cooperation between observers and actors." Elias smiled. "That sounds like a long way of saying we did something." Sareth looked at him, and this time there was no mistaking the shift in her expression. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "The collective has also made a decision," Veshtal continued. "We will open limited access to our archives for your kind." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Ambassador Lin's voice came through the channel, sharp with focus. "Limited how?" "Shared research," Veshtal said. "Joint observation missions, combined response teams for future anomalies." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That sounds a lot like you stepping out of the shadows." Veshtal's gaze settled on him. "It sounds like us standing beside you instead of behind you." The screen faded. Elias let out a slow breath. "Well," he said, mostly to himself, "that's new." In the days that followed, the Armada began to break apart. Ships returned to their home systems, carrying evacuees to new worlds, temporary stations, and safe harbors. Human and Virelian crews worked together to set up support networks, sharing technology and methods in ways that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Elias moved between ships and stations, acting as a bridge where words still struggled. He saw humans learning to read the subtle movements of Virelian posture. He saw Virelians listening to human stories, not as data, but as something closer to maps of the heart. One evening, Elias found himself back on the Virelian station, standing near the same arch where he had first noticed Sareth's eyes. The hall was quieter now, not empty but softer. Groups of humans and Virelians stood together, talking in low voices. Data displays shared space with human drawings and photographs. Someone had even played music, a slow, simple melody that echoed gently through the curves of the station. Sareth approached him. "The collective has assigned me as a liaison," she said, "to your people." Elias smiled. "Guess that means I'm stuck with you?" Sareth tilted her head. "I believe the feeling is mutual." They walked together down one of the station's long corridors, past memory paths that now showed not just Virelian footsteps, but human ones too. "Do you ever regret it?" Elias asked. "Regret what?" Sareth replied. "Opening the door," he said. "Letting us in." Sareth considered this. "Do you regret stepping into the chamber?" Elias thought of the dark sphere, the falling worlds, the future that was not certain but possible. "No," he said. "Then neither do I," Sareth answered. They stopped near a wide window that looked out into space. The stars stretched in every direction, endless and quiet. Elias pressed a hand against the glass. "When I was a kid, I used to think the stars were watching us, like eyes in the dark." Sareth followed his gaze. "And now?" "Now I think," Elias said slowly, "they're just places waiting for someone to care enough to go there." Sareth nodded. "We thought they were stories already written." "And now?" Elias asked. "And now," she said, "we see that some stories are written by those who refuse to stop turning the page." Weeks passed. Joint missions launched. Human explorers and Virelian observers traveled together to distant systems. They studied strange worlds, not just to record them, but to understand how to protect them. The memory engines were no longer hidden away. Humans were allowed to see parts of them to add to them. Not just endings, but beginnings. First settlements, first shared cities, first schools where children of different species learned side by side. One day, Elias was invited back to the chamber. The dark sphere still floated in its frame, silent and steady. Sareth stood beside it, her hands folded in front of her. "It has changed," she said. Elias frowned. "It doesn't look any different." "It does not show only what has been lost now," Sareth explained. "It shows what is still being built." She touched the sphere. This time, Elias did not see a dying world. He saw a wide plain under a soft blue sky. Humans and Virelians worked together, setting up structures that curved and angled in ways that mixed both their styles. He saw children running between them, laughing in voices that carried more than one language. He saw a space station forming around a young star, its design neither fully human nor fully Virelian. He saw ships traveling in small groups, not as rescue fleets, but as neighbors visiting neighbors. Elias felt his throat tighten. "This is us," he said. "It is a possibility," Sareth replied, "one that grows stronger the more you act." Elias turned to her. "You used to be watchers." "Yes," she said, "and you used to be alone." "Guess we both got tired of that," Elias said. Sareth's eyes shifted, and this time there was no doubt. She was smiling. Later, as Elias prepared to return to a human station, Ambassador Lynn met him at the docking bay. "You've started something," she said. Elias shrugged. "Feels more like it started me." Lynn studied him. "Do you understand what this means? The galaxy is going to change. Faster than it ever has." Elias looked out at the line of ships waiting beyond the station, human and Virelian mixed together like pieces of a single pattern. "Good," he said. "It was getting a little too quiet out there." As his shuttle pulled away, Elias watched the Virelian station grow smaller against the field of stars. Sareth stood at the window of the docking ring, her figure still and steady. Elias raised a hand in a simple wave. Sareth lifted her own hand in return, mirroring the gesture. The shuttle jumped to faster than light, and the stars stretched into lines of soft white. Elias leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the first time he had spoken without calculation. Of the question that had followed. Of the door that had opened because someone had been willing to look and someone else had been willing to show. When he opened his eyes again, the display in front of him showed a growing map of joint missions, shared projects, and worlds marked not with warning symbols, but with small lights. Not lights of danger, lights of presence. Somewhere far behind him, the memory engines of the Virelians recorded a new kind of entry. Not a collapse, not an extinction, but a moment when two species decided that the universe was not something to be watched from a distance. It was something to be walked through together. And across the quiet, endless dark, the stars did not need to look back anymore. Because, at last, someone was looking up at them with the intent to stay.